Building a factory means steel on the ground, environment clearances, pollution management, a whole lot of things, and about 1,000 people employed in that company. Starting entrepreneurship early is not a bad thing. What's the difference between family and friends? It's about how much you respect and how you're willing to work with each other and what are you ready to accept as your fault.
Milk, eggs, electric bikes, tactical vests, vaccines, fragrances, plastics, textiles, nutraceuticals, and fuel. What do all of them have in common? After all, these are some completely random, unrelated things, right? But what if I tell you that I can make all of the above materials and more using just one technology? It's almost like I have Aladdin's genie lamp. Don't believe me? Well, stick around for a little bit for this conversation, and maybe you will start to believe in the magic of precision fermentation. Hey everyone, welcome to a special edition of Crafting Bharat, powered by Innovations Venture Studio, in association with Speciale Invest, Byte Avenue, and Fart Capital. Our beverage partner is Tribe Kombucha. In this edition, we uncover the journeys of India's best deep tech entrepreneurs building the future of humankind. I'm your host Nithish. In this episode, we have with us Subramani Ramachandrappa, the co-founder of Fermbox. Fermbox is building on precision fermentation technologies to make novel biomolecules and enzymes from India for the world. Subbu, welcome to Crafting Bharat.
Hey, thank you.
Now, before we begin, would you like to address our audience on what precision fermentation means and how do you leverage that to make your products at Fermbox?
Definitely. I think all of us know about fermentation, and fermentation has been around for centuries. We know beer, we know the whiskeys, we know the wines, and everything else alcoholic. At home, we always do fermentation like yogurt, right? We've made yogurt, buttermilk. So fermentation has been around. So what's fermentation? You put living bugs into a pot which has carbon, hydrogen, and nitrogen. And those bugs tend to grow, and when they grow, they change that liquid into something exotic as alcohol, right? When we say precision, it's quite understood from there. It's more precise, which means when we brew beer, you do it in a very uncontrolled manner. You provide it food, you provide it the tank, and then it goes about fermenting and produces beer. But if you want to make insulin, which is also fermentation, right? You modify the organism to make insulin. I'll talk about that later. And then you control the air and everything else so that only the bugs which can make insulin, when I say bugs, it could be a microbe like a bacteria or a yeast, produces just the insulin you need. Because then it can be purified easily and goes into the body. Like all of us, if there are more than one species, we tend to compete. So in precision fermentation, you don't want competing species inside the fermenter in which you make products. So precision fermentation is about precisely fermenting a particular organism to produce a specific product.
Can you tell us an example of maybe having the same input and just by altering the criteria, you get vastly different products?
Like humans? Yeah, so most of the bacteria and fungus and yeast, the microbes that I say, grow everywhere. They grow on wood, on shoes, on the stable, on you right now. And if we take a swab, and you'll find so many different bacteria or fungus, and they tend to grow and produce different products. So if a bacteria is growing in a place where there's just a lot of sugar, right, it consumes the carbon source there and produces a sugar which is a certain pH in Bangalore, say at 30 degrees. But what if the bacteria is growing in a volcanic region? It's more alkaline, there's sulfur, it's hot, or in Antarctica where it's very cold. So the same bug in a different place produces a different output, much like nurture in human beings. So I find it very fascinating when I look at bugs, that the same bug which is growing on your shoe, eating up your leather, could do something else, look very differently when it's put in a different environment. And I think like all of us humans, bugs tend to adapt and evolve much faster. A bacteria evolves every 20 minutes, it has a new generation. Just imagine. And we are what, Gen Z or now it's millennials? Yeah, so bugs tend to go through that phases much faster. Let me give you a small example about enzymes, right? If you ever buy apple juice in the shop, it's kind of clear. It seems to be like wine. But when you make it at home, it's hazy, right? Because you use an enzyme to break down the starches in apple juice, which makes it more clarified. The same enzyme which breaks down starch in apple juice can be used in textiles, because when in the past, when you buy cotton clothes, it used to have starch, and they used to add acid and heat to remove the starch. Now you can add an enzyme, the same enzyme which goes for apple juice, onto textiles, and it will break down the starch, which means you have textiles without starch. If I sat with you and we note down 10 places where there's starch, you could add these enzymes to break down those starch.
Very interesting. Right. Slightly off tangent, and maybe if I can just take you to early days of your career at Biocon. You had mentioned that you had to switch away from Biocon to starting your own company because you had a family to support and you wanted to earn more.
Who told you that?
There was a conversation that we had before. Let's just say that that's known information publicly, right? But conventional wisdom is on the other side saying 9 out of 10 startups fail, and often there is more risk on this side than the other side. Chances of you going broke are a lot more if you had started a business. So what did you know internally that pushed you to start a business and made you think that you can make a lot more money?
I think when you're broke, you're broke. You can't be more broke, right? Even if you borrowed like lots of money, then you're still broke, right? So for me, it was very clear, like I needed to make more money, and being in a salaried job means would take much longer. Though I did very well in Biocon, they were very kind to me. I get accused for being very favored in terms of my pay scale growth, but it wasn't enough. And clearly business was attractive. One, I came from a business family. My dad was a textile. I did textile engineering to join family business. Now, why I joined biotech is another story. But once I joined, I think the need for money was definitely a decision which pushed me to do. Who wouldn't like to be in Biocon back in the day, because it was young, it was energetic, Kiran Mazumdar was leading the show, it was just awesome. And I was having a lot of fun. But I found that business is more fun and there were more opportunities to make more money, and being broke helped me make that decision because it didn't matter. And I personally feel starting entrepreneurship early is not a bad thing, because your hurdle rate or what you need to do is just get past your salary levels, and that's easier. But when you're in your 50s, it's much hard because maybe you're getting paid so much more, and it's much more difficult to maintain the same thing in early days of entrepreneurship.
Right. But why not just go on the family business side itself instead of starting?
Oh no, my dad passed away earlier in 97, so there was no way the business could hold on. Old family run joint family businesses don't survive beyond the patriarch unless the second generation has gotten. I was still studying, I was just having fun. There was no way I could have pulled that off early on.
You fondly recollect to a time when you started Richcore out of Biocon that Kiran Mazumdar Shah was able to support you and Biocon was able to partner you for Richcore, that it actually made you start the company without putting up too much upfront capital. Can you talk a little bit about how that experience has been?
Yeah, like sometimes, when I have very troublesome team members, I tell them, I'll pay you, don't work with us. I think something like that happened in Biocon. No, but frankly speaking, when I went back to Kiran and I said I would like to go start my own thing, and first thing she said, what are you going to do? And then I said, anything, I need to do a business. Then I said, what if I were an external partner for Biocon? And she was very supportive, including the other senior people in the team who ran the business. So it's quite interesting. I didn't know the word negative working capital, but that's what worked. For me, it was quite clear. So I would buy products and I would work on them to build applications from Biocon. They would give me, say, a 60, 90-day credit, and I would sell it to my customers and collect the money within that 90 days. So what that means is you can retain your margins or profits and then pay the person or Biocon who credited the money, the product. So in essence, it's a negative working capital. Now all investors want you to have that. But it happened to me very early on, so that early margins allowed me to invest. And then what came good was I didn't spend all that money. I would put it back into the R&D or infrastructure, because biotech is an asset heavy industry. and you realize that once you get into it. And it was early days. There was no real VC banking support for biotech, so it really worked well. And they supported me quite a bit for the first 3 years. And like all kids, I moved on from kindergarten to primary school. I went to ISB, and that
Right.
kind of changed the game.
Right. Why are you so backable? Clearly, a lot of support has
Huh?
come your way along your career.
Backable, I don't know, I should ask that to my investors.
No, but I'm sure you have a view.
See, I have pets at home. I have 2 dogs right now. And whenever a guest comes home, they ask me, does he bite? And my answer to them is, not yet. So you're backable till you're not. So I'm just enjoying the time in the sun. And you should ask Vish, you should ask 314 Venture East, 8 Roads. They've backed me quite a bit. But I think it comes from my family background. My dad, when I was growing up, taught me some crazy stuff. He was an entrepreneur, right? So he would ask me to go give somebody some cash, some business guy. And I was on my bike and it was just a chore. So I would put it into the pocket, ride out, and say, hey, uncle, my dad sent this to you, and give it to him. You know, in Bangalore, we call everyone uncles and aunties. And then this uncle, one day, he counts it. He said, hey, wait. And he counts it. And then he says, you got given me 2 notes less. And I'm like, no, my dad just gave me this and I gave it to you. He says, no, I think your dad gave you in full and you're whacking the money. I was like taken aback. And then I went back to my dad and I was furious. I said, you didn't give me enough currencies and that guy is saying this. And then he said, oh yeah, come, let's go meet him. So then my dad takes me to this uncle and then they're laughing. I'm like, why are they laughing? And then my dad says, you know what, when I give you money, count it. When you give it to somebody, count it. I see that you don't count it. And that day he also told me one thing: if you took money from somebody, make sure you return it. So for me, I'm a little risk averse in that sense, though I'm an entrepreneur. In the sense that if I borrow or if anyone invests, I take it very personally that it's not your money, they're paying their part in your company, they're equal partners. So I have very high respect for those who invest. And I'm answerable to my mom, my kids. I don't want it to be that I swindle money. I think that really helps. And it's the true north of I take less, I don't raise too much money, and I try to make sure it works.
And you're also really good at what you do.
See, I'm a textile engineer. I'm already a misfit in my company, right? Imagine a textile engineer applies to my company and I'm sure my R&D guys will reject him. Right? So I can't say I'm good at it. What I'm good at is like being resilient when things are bad.
There was a period at your time during Richcore when you pivoted from doing industrial enzymes to animal-free vaccines as such. I know there's an interesting backstory to that as to how you dawned upon that and then how you decided to do that and then the pivot happened naturally. Can you maybe explain a little bit on
I think
that?
pivot is a bad word. But anyway, so I don't think we really pivoted. We made enzymes which came and we wanted to conserve food, energy and water. That's how Richcore started off, right? I'm glad you didn't ask why Richcore, why the name, like that's more complicated.
And your email is also subramani.rich.
Yeah, rich without money. Till sometime. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is that we wanted to conserve food, energy, water when Al Gore had this movie called Inconvenient Truth. Everyone's watching it. I was like thrilled. I'm like, yeah, this is what we should do and stuff. And we made products to clean up wastewater, to make sulfur-free sugar, sulfur-free to make white sugar, right? And brown sugar that we know of now wasn't there then. The only brown sugar was banned. And then we saw that the customers weren't moving quickly enough. Though it was cleaner, better, etc., they're like, why should I change? So sustainability was not what it is now as a thought process in 2000s. So we made these products, we started selling, and then we saw that we weren't growing fast enough. Like wastewater is big now. Back in the day, it was like, why do I care? Since we were making enzymes, we said, why don't we make enzymes which are more viable and attractive? But around the same time, I was vaccinating my kids, my eldest daughter, right? And then I saw on the package that it said it had animal components. Like, can you imagine? Like, you're vaccinating your kid and it says, it doesn't have a red dot, but it has animal component. Being an enzyme guy, I read more about it and I saw that how do they make it? They use a lot of animal-derived components to make the vaccines. Like they use a pig's enzyme to make a vaccine which goes into our body. And I read that in the past, kids in US got a monkey virus which they would have never got if they never got vaccinated. So that became quite easy to understand. So since we're making enzymes, we said, hey, why don't we make all the enzymes that came from animals and give it to the biopharma guys who could make safer medicines. And then we saw there were companies doing it, but they were super expensive. So that's where the India story came. Like Biocon was trying to make insulin for the world, and they were not able to penetrate into US and Europe. One, because the European supplier was to sell it at very high price, like $700 a gram. So we were able to make that and give it to Biocon at less than $200. So they became viable, and they could enter, and also they control the quantity they would give to a company like Biocon. So we gave them like huge quantities, which allowed them to go into US, into European markets. And then the basket became bigger. We made human albumin, we made transferrin, growth factors, because you make one and then you see what are the other animal components. So if you ask me, did we pivot? No. I think it was a business requirement to make something which was more sellable in a smaller scale than very large scale, and also something which made a difference. So I had to compromise. So instead of conserving food, energy, and water, we said, let's make medicine safer. So I would very proudly say more than like several billion doses of insulin have been made safer with our product.
Fantastic. After Richcore's acquisition, you had the opportunity to stay in, let's just say, a little more established corporate structure. And I'm assuming that you made a lot of money by then. The reason I'm asking is because motivation one to start Richcore was that you needed more money to sustain a growing family and all of that. What was motivation two to start Fermbox?
Yeah, I think the motivation about money was lost within 2-3 years of starting business, right? I was very comfortable. And when Richcore grew leaps and bounds, and it became also a CMO for many companies trying to make milk and egg and all that, and we had just incoming inquiries. We made plants in Bangalore, Tumkur, all in rural areas, etc. And then we got acquired by Laurus Labs, and we became Laurus Bio. Now, I personally felt that it took me 15 years to build Richcore into a good enough business. Biotech takes longer than most other tech, because one, you have to teach the bug. I know how difficult it is to teach my kids. Imagine a bug who can't even, you don't understand the language, right? It's a long gestation period. Now, having said that, if you want to build out a global biotech company, which is asset heavy, you need more collaborative large-scale manufacturing. You need product collaborations. And I saw that we could disrupt or build out a global biotech business with technology developed out of India. And to do that, you can't do it with a strategic sitting in your cap table. You can't do it in one company or one country or one state. Now just imagine someone makes milk. It has to compete with every cow head in every village, every street in our country. So how many factories do you need to make milk protein? You would need a factory in every county, every district, like a milk factory, right? And you can't do that even with government funding. So very clearly collaboration is the way. So that's one. And two, biotech in general, we work like closed door. We don't discuss what we do, how we do, and we don't collaborate enough. So I felt Fermbox should be that open, collaborative company. And if you want to do that, we want to build out plants in different countries, different regions, and have different people who can invest and build out this. And I can't do that in a 15-year-old company which has different type of investors. So Fermbox had to start with a clean slate. So I could have stayed with Laurus Bio. In fact, my people who acquired us were very unhappy when I left. But I thought I can disrupt fermentation for the world. That's why I could.
Got it. Can you maybe help us understand a few specific examples of how collaboration has helped you with bigger players at Fermbox?
Like, see, I want to build like right now, 1 million liter fermentation capacity. When I say million liter, it's like in Indian context, 10 lakh liters of fermenter volume. So you have big fermenters like 200,000, 300,000. It costs like $120 million. As a startup, I don't think even if you're well dependable, backable entrepreneur, anyone's going to give you $100 million to build a factory, right? Building a factory means steel on the ground, environment clearances, pollution management, a whole lot of things, and about 1,000 people employed in that company. You can't do it as a startup. It would have taken me at least a few more years to do that. So it was very clear that I should try and do a collaborative model. Two, any fermentation, like I told you earlier, needs sugars, needs carbon source. So why not build out these plants near a sugar mill or a distillery, or where there is starch, so you can use that just nearby rather than shipping it across different countries. Three, you need water. Four, you need people. Five, you need lots of capital, right? Now, if you want to do all that, you want to attract people who are not necessarily in biotech manufacturing. So my strategy is to reach out to sugar mills, paper mills, distilleries who already have utilities, power, steam, water, and say, look, if we build this biotech facility with you, we have locally sourced sugars, you have the utility, then we can do lower capex, lower opex, and produce large scale plants. In order to do that, India takes a little longer to give approvals to co-locate. So I chose a Thai company, which is a government owned company, and we were able to get into a contract and break ground in 3 months last December, and the plant will be operational Jan 2025. So international collaboration with established players allows you to access finance, build a plant under their nose. Most people like that. Three, their risk averseness is to your strength, because their IRR expectations will be lower than a typical investor, as long as they contribute with land and equipment and stuff like that. And you bring the knowledge. So that's the collaboration we have with a company called BBGI in Thailand, and we're building a 1 million liter facility which will be operational phase 1 by Jan 25. I intend to take this model and expand to other geographies like Africa and to India, Eastern Europe. I think fermentation will be needed in such huge volumes to make colors, dyes, flavors, everything that comes from plants, animals and stuff like that in very large quantity. So you and I could become mutual fund holders, because eventually they're going to be built like power plants and internet cables. So fermentation will become a household name, and we'll all be buying stocks of companies who are building assets. So I want to bring that disruption if we can.
But a very ignorant perspective is that this logic also sounds very obvious, that you have to partner with these big guys to be able to do all of these things instead of doing everything on your own. Then why aren't many people doing it?
Well, I think you have, in biotech, there's a lot of value to be made, because you're a tech based. So you have technology, you have manufacturing technology, and then you have commercialization. And everyone's worried about IP. Everyone thinks someone could do something and stuff like that. But I think this is a global problem we're all solving. So if 4 guys copy your tech, they may be like small to medium size. You won't really dent the real global opportunity. So I don't know why others aren't do it. I feel this is the only way to do it, to build really scale. Like, let's take even Biocon, right? Like, they are close to $1 billion or a little more, over 40-45 years of existence. And that's because they build their own plants, they collaborate very little, and they create their own products, go to market. Maybe commercialization, there's partnership. But I don't think that's the future of biotech. Biotech, you will see, like, think of a laptop. There are technologies from hundreds of companies, right? Even an Apple doesn't really make all the products. They put it together. And that thinking hasn't come into biotech. So I would say it's old thinking, but in a different industry.
From enzymes for washing denims to that of creating novel biomaterials, you've had a very rapidly evolving career doing multiple different things. What has been the most unexpected lesson that you've learned so far?
I feel there's nothing different in any of the businesses or any sciences.
Right.
Like, I'll give you an example. Like, in IT, you have zeros and ones, the binary code with which we do magic, right? We are able to use computers, internet, and everything else. In nature, all living things have 4 variables bound together like a ladder in 2 strands. Like, you may have seen most biotech companies have this helix structure. Now, the A, T, C, and Gs are connected together like a necklace, and that's the life code or DNA. This was kind of found out in 50s, and in 1985 we made insulin, which means that we can now understand DNA and the genes far better. Like you do in software, cut paste, copy paste. You can take patches of software and mix and match. It's like making a Spider-Man. The spider bites Spider-Man and then he can spin a web. What happened? So the gene which made spider web in a spider got mutated with his gene. So now he can climb buildings, swing on his web, etc. Similarly, you can take a gene which is in a cow, put it in an yeast, and prevent it from making alcohol, but make insulin or make milk or make anything else. So, frankly speaking, this is how biotech is evolving, and there is no difference, in my opinion, between IT and biotech and chemistry. I think we've done a terrible job in the past separating the sciences. I think what you'll see is convergence of knowledge. There's biophysics, like you break a leg, they say go to biomechanics, and they're going to build you some like brace or something. So it's only time when everything is going to come together. And as biotech people, we use chemistry, we use physics, we use mechanical, we use everything. So to me, it was not different. I think what mattered is if were you an engineer, can you build products? That's what I see.
Got it. Extremely fascinating perspective. Do you think sufficiently enough people are not attracted to the domain, or doesn't have the glitz and the glam of another sector, say for example like space tech?
Well, who talked about space tech few years ago? You would read like some PSLV, Sat 1, Sat 2, way back, right? So it's biotech's time is coming. Right now, we're not threatened by global warming. We're not threatened by want for more water. We're not really threatened. And it's going to happen overnight. You'll need food from fermentation. You'll need denim, dyes from fragrances. Already there are no trees to cut and make fragrances. So we're making it through fermentation. Like pine oil used to be the base for most flavors and fragrances. Where are the trees? So that industry has moved faster. What you will see is almost everything we need in our daily lives to survive, like fuel, water, food, clothing, will stop being available in nature from plants and animals or through chemistry. You'll want to make it in a smaller footprint. So why make hooves and horns if you want to make milk? So you'll put a small tank and make like lactoferrin. You'll make casein in a smaller system. And I think biotech is going to be all pervasive. It already is. It will be. Everyone knows DNA now thanks to COVID. Right? So you're going to have these big shifts, and I think the next 100 years will belong to biotech.
There's a common notion in the startup world that you don't do business with very close friends and family, right? But you've had a unique vantage point with Preeti being your wife and your co-founder at Fermbox. How do you manage the dynamics between running a very demanding business and a family with young kids?
Yeah, that's a good question. But who told you family, friends can't be part of business? Look at the Ambanis, look at the Adanis, all family businesses, right? So I think that notion is wrong. So for me personally, I think it's a new notion saying you can't work with family and friends. But think about it this way, right? Yeah, the first several years of my career, I didn't have family necessarily, but my family always helped. Like Preeti helped even Rich Course. She was helping us pro bono to build out product strategy. I'm a very socially bound person. Like I said, I have 4 kids, like 3 girls and a boy. Like I have extended family. I grew up in a joint family. So if you have ever lived in a joint family, everything is about sharing. You are more than willing to lose, and then you get a whole lot. So I think for me, the psyche of working with, and like in my last company, I have 2 of my friends. One guy came back, he was making gambling machines in Reno. We put him as head of finance and ops. Another guy was doing customer service, Rajesh, like he was helping, how do you fulfill customers, make them happy types. So he ran our business development, right? And let's take my investors also. You build a relationship. What's the difference between family and friends? It's about how much you respect and how you're willing to work with each other and what are you ready to accept as your fault. And I think I'm a kind of person, as an entrepreneur, you should be willing to accept your faults. Then you can work with your wife, your mother-in-law and father-in-law also, right? Because it's okay to make a mistake. And I think that helped me in my career. It helps me now. I take my family and friends' suggestion as importantly as my team members. And I don't see a difference between senior and juniors within my company. I really feel I am like that. And I think it's worked very well. And I'm very happy to say sorry. If you're married, you'll know what I mean. So you can just maintain the same thing. And with family and kids, I think they all become part of the greater goal. Like for an entrepreneur, I think the family's What they think of you as a leader is more important for a true entrepreneur, because you don't want to let them down. The minute you take that into perspective, you'll never let your investors down. Because if you let them down, your family is not going to be happy that you did that. And in my personal experience, I'm a very happy guy. I am very happy, whether I had or I didn't have. And once you're happy, it's a constant state. I don't think you can become more happy if you bought a big car or you don't have a car. So for me, if once I hit that point of happiness when I started Ridgecore, I have not stepped back. Problems come, problems go, businesses go low and high. I do get excited when we get orders. I do feel bad when I don't. But tomorrow is another day. So it's a mixed bag.
But what is that happiness a function of?
For me, it's clearly family.
Really?
Clearly family. Always.
Right.
And I think as an entrepreneur, your biggest backers are going to be your family. They let you travel. They let you take rest. They let you take sleepless nights. They let you come and vent the problems you have with your investors, right? Or your customers. And they have to swallow all of that. Like, you become kind of central to their lives when you're an entrepreneur. And at the end of the day, why are you doing this, right? And I think when I started my career, I told you I needed money. It dried up very fast. And now when I did Fermbox, it's not even about change the world, disrupt fermentation. It's about saying, look, now you're like a bigger team, you have more people, you feel you can contribute. And if you go back to our own mythological teachings, it says you have to do your karma. And if you can, you should. And that's what I'm doing. And it's making me more happy. So when I lose something now, I'm not as disappointed as I used to be before.
What's the big dream for Fermbox?
Like I said, I would be very happy if as an Indian company, we are able to disrupt global fermentation. So I want to see Fermbox having manufacturing plants across the world, building technology in India and delivering them all over the world. And I think my team is very resonating with that. Already we're building out a plant in Thailand, and we're going to do that much faster and we'll make biotech sexy again.
Right, we hope we really do. Right, it's time now for some very quick takeaways for our audience. Take no more than 10 seconds to answer some of these questions.
Sure.
What would you change looking back on the journey so far?
I would try to keep my hair.
What are you the most grateful for?
I say God. I mean, I know it's cliched, but I am like that.
Pick an alternate career if not for biotech or textile.
Fashion.
Any specific instances you'd like to point out?
Yeah, I had a company called Party People. That was my first venture.
Party People?
Yeah, it was called Party People.
Right.
So after my dad died, I needed to make money, you know that. So then what better? I was in my college, so we started hosting parties for New Year's, Valentine's. So we would do these big events. It was really awesome. Like the high of doing an event and being in the middle of that party and making money at the end of it was really awesome. But I stopped because I got a job in bioeconomy. So I stopped. And you won't believe it, they interviewed me on Valentine's Day.
Really?
So I started the program and went and attended the interview. I would like to go back to that industry.
One non-negotiable quality you look for in your team members?
I like people who show willingness to learn. I think we all need to be willing to learn. So I look for people who are ready to accept their mistakes and are willing to learn. Not all can be leaders. Not all can be followers. So you need to have a mix of that. But when I look at a person, I think I make a judgment very quickly if I can build trust with the guy. I start with high level of trust unless they prove otherwise. So I look for dependability and learnability.
Something you wish you did more of?
I do everything I want to do. I'm sorry, I can't remember. I would like to not work.
Got it.
If that made any sense to you.
All right, well, thanks so much for your time, Subbu.
My
We wish you
pleasure.
all the best. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
That's it for this episode. We'll be back with more startup stories. A big thank you to the audience for tuning in. Do like, share, and subscribe to our channel and get the best seats in house to understand how deep tech startups are shaping the future of our country. Until next time, I'm your host, Nithish. Crafting Bharat, a deep tech edition, is an initiative by NewsReach in association with VC Circle and produced by HT Smartcast.